Spinning. Okay, we're good. Hello, everybody. This is Street Fight Politics. I'm Doc Eddie, joined by Harry Ramsbottom and our newest member, Louie Lujan, who's our political expert and genius. So I was just going to get things started by saying that hopefully you watched the debate last night. I know I did. And, you know, to my mind, that wasn't a debate last night. That was a cage match. And one person went in, two people went in, and one person walked back out. And I can't say that you know exactly who's going to win that, but after the debacle that you saw with Donald Trump perform, there's no way a sane person can actually back this guy anymore. The masterful way that Kamala got him, led him into traps. Now, I'll have to be honest with you. I was a little worried. In fact, I was kibitzing with Harry last night. The first few minutes, I thought, started kind of slow. I mean, I'm more pugnacious. I would have come out and just punched him right in the nose. You know, she was much smoother. And by the time we got into 20 or 30 minutes, he was a raving lunatic. And I mean, it's like, you know, I'm sitting here eating my meal of fettuccine alfredo and my sauteed cat as we speak. So. But anyway, look.
9:31 is when he trotted out the dog. So 31 minutes is when he went full on batshit.
Yeah.
That's all we're going to remember about this. So, Louie, you're the political guy here. Tell us, what do you think?
You know, I think there's, you know, two ways to look at this. One is, you know, the obvious through the lens of, you know, the guy just went off the rails. I mean, you know, comments about eating dogs and cats. I mean, just completely, you know, you just want to look at someone like that and say, like, are you out your mind? I mean, what are you talking about? But the other lens that, you know, look at it from is like, you know, we wake up the next day and, you know, we laugh about it and we understand and how bizarre it was, but yet half the country is still going to probably support this guy, right? So on one hand, it is funny and all that, but politically speaking, there is still a race to be won. And my ultimate point is this: is that I think too often than not, as Democrats, we tend to underestimate the other side, and I don't want that to happen again because we've had it happen. So even though it is bizarre and it is nuts and eating dogs and cats is outrageous, there are people out there that didn't see the debate. There are people out there that no matter what will support him. So we're hoping that lunacy, you know, rang with enough independence to come our way in the key states.
Well, I mean, you know, along that line, and this is something Harry pointed out, I mean, it's like in the latest polling, you know, Gallego is just creaming Kerry Lake. I mean, you know, up 10 points, you know, maybe even more.
Right.
So why isn't that translating over for Kamala here in this state?
You know, this is something I've learned. I'm not saying this is the exact answer, but just from my experience in politics, I remember there was a council member that I used to serve with, and when I was in my 20s serving, he was in his 70s already, and he told me something that I'll never forget. He said that voters are finicky, and there's a lot in that statement, you know. And I think when it comes down to it, to oversimplify a voter is a big mistake. And I think the answer to the question is simply that, you know, I think Ruben has a lot more history. He has a lot more, people know him a lot more in Arizona. They're just more comfortable with him. And I think when you compare him to his opponent, he's a better choice and people just know him. And when it comes to Kamala Harris, they don't know her as much in Arizona. And I think that's still her uphill challenge here.
Well, is 55 days enough, you know, to overcome that?
Correct. And that's not a lot of time at all. I mean, people date longer than that before they get serious, right? So it's, I mean, it's, you're right. It's not a long time. And I am worried about that, actually. I think, you know, nationally, Democrats can win the race without winning Arizona, but it helps. Arizona helps.
So let me go back to a little bit about the immediate effect. And obviously, we're not going to see the polling effect from this debate solidly if such a thing can be said about polls, for another week or so until this batch of polling gets processed and hits the streets here, probably towards the end of the month. But the focus group polling that a lot of the networks had, and I was been watching both ABC and NBC today, as well as a little bit of Fox News, and Fox isn't talking about it, but ABC and NBC are talking about what they got, and they had focus group polling for all the 7 states, and a lot of them were focused on Arizona.
Really?
And and so I think the one that I saw in Arizona was an NBC one. 7 out of the 10 people in the focus group were more inclined, or either had chosen Kamala at the end of the debate, or were inclined to be more open to Kamala. 1 was undecided, and 2 were Trump.
Which means the
10 people, but all these people, by the way, had been Trump voters in 2016.
No, I was going to ask you that. So they were okay. Interesting.
Well, and again, I'm going to come back to that because this is a conversation Harry and I've been batting around for weeks and months now. Is I think there are people that are not being picked up in these polls. That I think there's going to be a lot of women that are married to MAGA Trump men that are literally afraid to tell their husbands that they're going to vote for Kamala, so they're going to carry around, MAGA hats and go in and vote for Kamala Harris. And I also think there's a lot of voter registration that you're also not seeing that's coming out right now.
I agree with that 100%. I think the voter registration has always been that kind of like hidden weapon, depending on what side you're on, kind of the thing. It's that underestimated, silent kind of voice there.
Yeah.
Voter registration drives.
When I see voter registration numbers, when I see the number of volunteers that are being generated, and when I see the dollars that are being generated, I'm talking small dollars, not the big PAC dollars. This is all screaming for a much bigger wave of support for Kamala and the Democrats than I think is really being accurately depicted. For instance, last night, again, another little bit of a nugget that I picked up today was Harris's highest amount of fundraising happened last night between 10 and midnight ever.
Wow, that's interesting.
Across the board. And I mean, she's been beating Trump hands down by, not just double digits, but by orders of magnitude ever since the convention, ever since actually Biden stepped down. So This is really interesting to see. And she's got dollars to spend now. Lots of them.
Well, a lot of money to spend.
And they're spending almost all of them here in Arizona. So just be glad.
No, that's because you're saying that because you're in Arizona. She's spending it in places like North Carolina, where she, you might think she has even less of a chance than she does in Arizona. But the reality is, because that gubernatorial candidate is so terribly awful bad, he's down double digits behind the Democrat.
I think he's 3 points down. I mean, he's toxic.
Oh, he's more like 11 or 12 points from what I saw last on 538. Really? So I mean, he's not going to win. And I think the reality is that Harris is looking at that. She's within, depending on the day, 1 or 2 points of actually beating Trump, has equaled with him in many cases, certainly within the margin of error. And so now she's spending money there. That's her next big campaign stop, is North Carolina, to put him on the defensive and make him spend defensive dollars.
Right. Yeah, those are right. Exactly. The defensive dollars you have to spend are always you're always going uphill when you have to defend yourself like that. And I think the strategy has been to do that from the beginning. She's very effective at that.
It's analogous to exactly how the debate started last night, where she crossed the stage into his space.
Power boss move.
Yeah, I mean, that was big dick energy right there. It really
was. So I've had a chance, an opportunity to meet her several times when I was in California in elected office. And, she's always, from the beginning, was always underestimated. People always thought, Kamala Harris is not going to win. When she ran for the Senate, when she did all this, everybody thought she wouldn't go as far as she did. So it doesn't surprise me, is my point, that she's actually doing as good as she's doing. I think to a lot of people who just saw her for the first time last night or had enough time to make an assessment, I would say overall people probably were pretty impressed, because they finally for the first time saw somebody in a very long time that can actually take Trump on.
One of the comments that I heard, and again, I don't remember which focus group they were talking about, but one of the comments I heard today about the focus groups was that, and this is the reporter saying that the word that kept popping up in the one she monitored was presidential, and how presidential Kamala looked because she didn't lose her cool, and how unpresidential Trump looked, and the comments about what would he do in front of Xi Jinping? What would he do in front of Putin? What would he do in front of another dictator? I mean, if they remember, we know exactly what he does in front of he falls on his knees.
We have a record of it,
yeah, we know. But the fact is that she doesn't look that way, and she looked very strong. I was in her corner in 2020. I was pulling for her in the primaries. And obviously she didn't make it. So I was already predisposed for this to happen. But I'm even more impressed with her now than I was in 2020.
Me too. Yeah. And just to see her come from where she started off from that time to where she is now, there's been a complete, almost as if she, this time as vice president, just was the perfect amount of time. It wasn't too long, poised for this.
It was a great incubation period. It really was.
Absolutely. And almost as if an opponent like Trump is perfect for her.
Yes.
Someone to fight,
felonies and
yeah. It's like the perfect matchup for her. That's
extrapolating from that, when I now look at, let's fantasize and say she's going to win. And I'm really optimistic she will. What does 8 years on look like? Who can she bring into her cabinet? Who is going to be the next one? I mean, clearly Walz is not too old and will not be too old, but what about Pete Buttigieg? I mean, here, talk about somebody who could be incubated and who has all the raw ingredients, could do it now, but can you imagine when he's going to be like a monster as far as just his abilities and his competence in 8 years?
My prediction is that he'll be invited to be in the cabinet.
Oh yeah.
I mean, but he now lives in Michigan, and Gretchen Whitmer is term limited. So I'm fully expecting him to declare for Michigan governor,
or senator.
Senate, yeah, either or.
Yeah.
Think about what happened.
I think that to run for president, I think you get a little more administrative heft by being a governor.
I think you get experience, but if you look at who's actually won over the past, centuries or so,
we've turned. Yeah, I mean, from Barack on, we've sort of turned that on our head because that was always the received wisdom is that governors got senators got elected to be presidents. And
I mean, look at Trump. I mean, if you really want to go there, right? A quick side note. I was talking to someone not too long ago about this, and they obviously know I'm not a Trump supporter, but I kind of put this into perspective, and I said, think about this for a second. We live in a country where we had, Obama followed by Trump. Think about forget the differences for a second. Think about some of the similarities, not politically, but I mean the story. The who would have thought kind of a story. Only
the outsider.
The outsider.
Yeah.
And to Ed's point, we kind of turned it upside down going into this cycle, so anything can happen. But think about some of the other states too, where if she does win, some of the talent that'll be taken from Arizona, even. I mean, you talk about Kate Gallego, people like that. These are people that will get tapped, I think, to be in positions.
Yes, I fully expect Kate Gallego to get tapped. Absolutely.
Well, I think we know who our next NASA administrator is going to be.
Who would that be? I'm just curious.
Kelly.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Come on, guys, stick with me here.
I thought this was going into a joke territory.
No.
Vice President runs NASA.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. No, I mean, and then you think about, like, let's say she does win, and what happens to Trump then? The guy will probably spiral out of control, and I mean, he's doing it now, but
he goes to prison.
Yeah.
Dang it, I can't. Oh, I know who it was. Oh, another one, Shapiro. So I was watching Shapiro a day or two ago. I can't remember what show it was on. Doesn't matter. Shapiro, who's probably one of our most, well, him and Gretchen Whitmer actually know how to be on TV. Let's just say that they know how to project and know what to say, and they're quick and they're always on. And somebody was doing the 20 questions. What's going to happen in next year, where we're going to be, and they brought up Trump, and his one word answer was forgotten.
Yeah. Right.
And you know what? I think I would not have said that, but I think that's probably right. Listen to what Patton said back in 1943. American hates a loser. America hates a loser. They love winners. We hate losers. And as soon as somebody is a loser, they're gone. You can recover from that, but if you're 80 years old, you ain't recovering from being a loser. You don't have the runway to do that. And that's Trump.
Exactly. Yeah, that's absolutely true. No, absolutely. One of the things too is I was watching last night just the contrast in terms of the past and the future, because when you look at it, Kamala literally does represent the future. And I'm not even talking ethnically or anything like that. I'm literally talking about ideas, her story of where she's from, things like that. And that was so clear on the stage last night. And I think part of the reason why I think when it really comes down to it and people go into the booth in those swing states, I think they'll go her way. I really do. It's a different energy than it was with Hillary this time around. And
that's interesting you bring up Hillary, because they were talking with Hillary a few days ago, and they were asking her, why didn't you turn around and punch Trump or, walk him back? And he says, well, it's like I'm the first major female presidential candidate. And, I was feeling my way along, what's acceptable behavior for a lady up on stage like that? And, she said in retrospect, it's like I should have turned around and kicked his ass.
Right.
And I think if she would have done that, I think that would have gone a long way toward getting her a win.
But that's not her. And just as in, you're not going to get George W. Bush to endorse a Democrat or say something bad about a Republican. The worst he's going to do is what he has done and said, I'm just not endorsing anybody, which speaks volumes in Bush world. But to Louie's point, this is exactly it. There's this generational change, not just in age, but in mindset.
Right.
And you're really seeing that now. I was going to say turning the page, overused now at this point. So, but that's where we are, and America's ready to do that. They're ready to get rid of these folks. And when you look at Kamala and Tim Walz are exactly 1 year older than me. And so it's easy for me to identify with their experience, where they came through, even though they're vastly different as far as, I'm certainly not a biracial child, growing up in Oakland, California. But I remember those times. I remember what it was like. I remember the feelings of what it was. I went to school, just like Kamala was one of the first kids in busing. I went to a school in the Deep South the year after busing had started. I was one of that first group of white kids experiencing black kids coming in and seeing their fear and disruption and wondering as a 6-year-old, what the hell is up with that? Having no idea what the hell had just happened there.
What city was that?
I'm sorry?
What city was that?
Ocala, Florida.
Oh. I was in Louisville, and we had the same thing. There was Louisville's in Jefferson County, and the county schools and the city schools were separate, and the city schools are black, the county schools are white, white flag. So the year that I left Louisville was the year they started busing, and I mean, it was a huge fight. Now,
how long were you in Louisville for? Just a random question. I'm just curious.
Up until 1974. So my dad got transferred to. He worked for GE and got transferred to Decatur, Alabama, my senior year of high school, which really
got it.
Oh my God! Your dating life went well. It had a downturn, I'm sure.
Okay, I'll tell this story. It's like senior, hadn't been really interested in girls. And I said, I'm going to ask a girl out. So it's the first day of school at Decatur, Alabama. I go in, and the school I was in Louisville was 4,000 kids, freshman through senior. The school I went to was like 600 kids, so much smaller. And so anyway, I'm going down, looking, for wherever my homeroom is, and I see all these girls in the hallway. They're all screaming, and little knots of girls. They're jumping up and down. I'm thinking, well, they haven't seen each other, for the entire summer. What they were doing is they were showing each other their engagement rings.
Oh, jeez. Wow, man. That's different place and time.
It's like, that was not a good year.
Yeah, I can imagine that, man. I was in Louisville a couple of weeks ago, by the way. That's why I was asking.
Oh, it's changed since then.
It's probably not. So anyway, where were we?
Well, I think it's kind of fun to continue going on. I really want to know what as the expert in Arizona politics, Louie, what do you see happening here? Looking at your crystal ball here in the next 2 months, where are we at?
The first thing I will say, for the first time, I think that Kamala can win. I think the Democrats can win the state. I don't think it's going to be by a lot. If they pull it off in Arizona, it'll be by a point or two. That's my hunch. But for the first time, I'm sensing the energy is shifting here. And, Ed, the area that I live in, it's pretty conservative to moderate. I talk to my neighbors, they're pretty conservative or moderate people. For the first time, I hear them talking about, I think if there's one time for change, it's now, and I'm comfortable with the alternative. Whereas in the past, they weren't. So I'm, if you just take that small little sample size of Louie's block and you multiply it, throughout the state, I think that's enough to win by a couple points.
Well, I think you can leave out Prescott Valley, though.
Prescott is not Prescott. That'll never. Yeah.
No.
That's where Trump goes for the rallies when he's here, pretty much.
Well, same thing with Kerry Lake, which to me is a politician. Why do you go to, politic people that are already going to vote for you?
I have argued that. I have argued that since day one to everybody that runs for office. Do not preach to the choir. Don't be afraid to talk to people that don't vote for you. I told you guys a story of last time when I knocked on a door one time because they had my opponent's sign out front. I'm talking to the guy. I can tell I'm getting nowhere. He said, I'm not going to vote for you. I start walking around, turn around, I walk away. His dog comes from the backyard and jumps on me. And he says, hey, Mr. Lujan, my dog likes you. I'm going to vote for you. So my point is you just never know, man. I mean, just talk to people is what it comes down to.
What do you think is going to be? All right. I think you're right. Just looking at it from the externals, from all those other things that we talked about 10 minutes ago, I think Kamala is going to win in Arizona, and you're right by a point.
Yeah.
Given that, okay, let's just assume she does, and given that Gallego most likely will, do you think there's going to be enough of that coattail effect to actually switch the balance of power in the legislature?
Yes.
Good.
The simple answer, in my opinion, is yes, because there's only a seat or two right now that separates.
One seat, both chambers.
One seat, exactly.
Both chambers too.
Both chambers. So I think yes, but here's what I caution people though, and because I come from California, a state that has a super majority, right? So I see. So here's one thing that I caution people on. I go, we can do that, but what happens when you have the power? So we have to focus as Democrats. We got to play two dimensional, if you will, here, because you got to say, okay, we're going to win, but then when we win, what do we do with it?
Yeah,
it's a very different. It's like giving a kid, a few $1 million that grew up poor. It's hard to manage that, and I think that it's great to win, and I wish we do, but I think the real challenges are going to happen once we win here in Arizona.
Well, and going back to what we talked about a week or so ago, where with term limits. Now you've got all these new legislators up there who have a fixed period of time to make their bones to catapult that into their next job or whatever it is they're going to do. And yeah, there's a real temptation to let the crazy out.
Well, you have what happens in California as an example. You basically, the saying is you have the first house, the second, and the third house, and the third house are the lobbyists, and the third house stays forever. They just they rotate.
You're the continuity.
Exactly. Those are the lobbyists. They're the ones that control,
Yeah, and that's also why you get these bills that are written wholesale by lobbyists that they just sign their name to and then, put it in the hopper.
Right. And in full disclosure, I do government affairs, so I understand how it works.
Well, you're okay. You're on our side.
Yeah.
I have the right jersey on, right? So
also reminds me, where's my jersey?
Exactly. And the other thing too is I always tell even our staff, I say, look, we don't make the rules. We just have to understand how they work. Because once we understand how they work, no matter what side is in control, they're going to utilize them to their advantage. We just have to be smarter about it. I mean, it is what it is, right? So, but to back to your question, I think once the Democrats do turn Arizona blue, because I really believe it'll happen, that's when we really have to start developing a leadership structure here. Who are the, I hate to use the term bosses, but who are those people that you go to if you want to run for council? Example, you take these local city council districts, Phoenix, Glendale, all of these cities around here. Currently, you have Democrats running against Democrats. That would never happen in California. You just don't do that, because if you do that, you're committing political suicide. Yeah.
I'm sorry, carry on. I've got a story about that, a real life story here in Loudoun County, Virginia, but please finish.
I was just going to make one last point in that when you eliminate that internal cannibalism, I call it political cannibalism, then you start developing leaders and you start developing a bench, and then you start developing the minor leagues, if you will, rather than just letting the Democrats fight it out and whoever wins, wins, because there's a lot of good people that are going to lose elections because they ran against Democrats and they're politically obscure. And you don't want to do that. You want to develop your bench, but you can't do that unless you have power. And we're going to do it this time around. We just have to get smart about managing it.
That's exactly what we did here. It's been only in the last 10 years that Loudoun County has flipped from red to blue. And we're still a very pinkish shade of purple right now. Although depending on where you are, fairly safe. I live in a very strong blue county district. Our county supervisors and our school board, same districts, exactly the same. So we were good. We had everything all lined up until a few years ago when we had two Democrats run against each other because we didn't have the structure of people saying, no, you can't run. Don't do that. It was very laissez-faire and, everything's sunshine and puppy dogs. Let's just, may the best person win because it's a blue district. We can't lose.
Right.
And we lost.
Mm-hmm.
And we just literally by 100 votes, we lost. And we lost it to a MAGA extremist who got on the school board. And luckily, because it was a replacement election and she only had a year to make good on it, we were able to bounce her out in 1 year. But that's how I got re-involved in local politics, was because we needed somebody. I stood up, and then somebody better came along, and I did the Joe Biden and said, it's all yours, lady. Let me support you. I'll knock on doors and show you what I know. And we took it back. But that's exactly where we are is we're coming up because we do off-year elections. We now have to, at the very local precinct level, say, okay, we're not having this again. We're not going to do that again. We're not going to have multiple Democrats running against each other, at least certainly not after the primary.
And not in important districts that need to be flipped or whatever, because you do that, there's infighting, bad blood, one person loses, they're politically obscure, and nothing for the greater good. Yeah, that's lacking in Arizona on the Democratic side right now. It'll change, but it doesn't happen overnight.
No, it doesn't. And it takes a cultural change because there's so many, and this is, again, my own experience, which is now dated, but you tell me if it's still valid. On the Democratic side in Arizona, we still have enough of that independent, spirit where everybody go do whatever it is you want to do, and we'll shake up the box and we'll see where the chips fall. And then, it's all going to be good because it's either that or we're not going to win anyway, so it doesn't matter what you do. Because that was my district where I lived. Doesn't matter. Do what you want. You're not going to win.
But if you don't mind, I want to come back to last night's debate.
Yep.
I think there were two key issues that you're going to see again and again and again, at least for the next 55 days. And that was Trump's response when he was asked about vetoing a national abortion bill. And Kamala coming in and basically putting the state of Pennsylvania in her pocket by saying, you know what, you would sell out Ukraine and you would sell out Poland. So I want you to tell the 800,000 Polish, citizens here in Pennsylvania how you're going to sell them out. And it's like,
that was masterful.
That was brilliant. What do you say to that? He can't, it's like, oh, I never did that. Well, you did. I mean, it's like you can't, gaslighting only works, with your guys. We see what you did.
Right. Absolutely. And that abortion issue on the Republican side is such a losing argument. You just look at the polls. I mean, it's such an easy punch to take and to flip it around on him. To your point, you're right. When I saw that during the debate last night, I knew at that point, I'm like, oh yeah, no, she's definitely prepared. Definitely was waiting for that moment to come up and that issue to be brought up.
This is where you can tell that she's a prosecutor, that she's done this before. She had the fact. She probably had 100 other facts like that sitting in her back pocket, just ready to go.
When she was in California as the attorney general, she was very, people don't, unless you're from there, I guess, she was very aggressive on prosecutions. She was more so than even the Republican gentleman that she beat for statewide office. He was conservative to the extreme, but she wasn't politically conservative like him. But in terms of the prosecution, she went after a lot of people that some of the Democrats on the more liberal side of the party were not in favor of, but she did what she needed to do. And I think that prepped her well to run at a national level.
Yeah, she, as I recall, that's what got her bounced out of the lineup in 2020. But that's exactly what's going to help her get this election.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
that is great. Got her bounced out, but this time it's going to help her.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting point, by the way, because what didn't get her past the the primary actually is going to help her now in the general.
Well, I think that's an issue with the way the parties are set up in general.
Exactly.
I mean, you look at the Republican side, and they're not the Republican Party no longer exists. I mean, it is a one-man cult party, and more to the point, people that are still holding out hope that, we're going to go take our party back. What are you taking back? I mean, it's like literally Trump owns the voting lists, all the machinery that you need to run a party. I mean, he's in control of it now. How are you going to get it out? How are you going to take it back from him? I mean, for God's sakes, he can appoint his daughter-in-law to be head of the Republican Party. I mean, let me
tell you, as somebody who makes a living on big data, manipulating as a consumer of big data, you can buy that. It'll take a while, but all of that information is up for sale. You just need the money to do it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that is a good point. Yeah, the data is like the gold when you're running for office, right? So, and it changes so often. I mean, one thing I've been interested in too is somewhat debate related, is that Biden has done a really good job at staying under the radar to allow her to shine. And I kind of noticed that. Did you see the 9/11 memorial this morning?
Yes.
Where Trump and Biden and Harris were there. And Biden, I think, I can only imagine what that must feel like to have to, give up the presidency. But I think in terms of how he's handling it, he's doing very, very good at allowing her to shine and make her own.
Well, that just adds to his legacy that he's doing.
Yes,
exactly.
The perfect example, I think, for how to be an ex-president is Jimmy Carter, and I think Biden is absolutely learning from that. And I have to think, and I maybe I'm Pollyanna because I really do want to live in the best of all possible worlds. But I have to think that once he made that decision that I got to let it go, I think he might actually kind of now be enjoying life a little bit.
You can just see it in his face almost.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I can't imagine the weight of.
But at the same time, it's like I think his age is catching up with him because the few times you do see him on TV, he's looking like he's crossed. It's, when you see people age, at least in my experience, it's like you can go along, and then all of a sudden there's just you
hit a cliff.
You hit a cliff, and it's just like bam, you just head down.
Yeah,
I think that's where Joe is right now.
And you, in your assessment, you can see that he's at that point where he's just kind of, yeah. I mean, it's sad, but it is life, I guess. And when you think about this historically, I think we're going to look back at this, 20 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever, and really understand how significant this moment was in American history. I really believe right now it's happening so fast that we're not able to really understand what it means in the context of the.
I'll tell you exactly what it means. We've run right up to turning into 1938 Nazi Germany. Yeah. And I think we're going to be able to walk back from the line.
I think so. When people talk about democracy as a system being able to self-regulate, I think this is the perfect example of what we're seeing. It has its ups and downs and its kinks, and it's not the perfect system, but none is. But here we are.
I've got a pretty deep and long experience with the UK and the people of the UK, both personally and professionally. And it has always struck me since I started dealing with them how really close we are. And I'm not just talking because we speak the same language, but attitudes. They watch our TV, we watch theirs. It's even gotten more integrated in the past 2 decades even. And so when I see them being able to throw out their idiots who had been in power for so long, I absolutely see the same sort of movement here. Obviously the governmental systems are different. It's not going to work the same. But the fact that you've got enough of a groundswell now of people who are just saying, okay, that's enough. We've had enough of the madness. Let's get to some sanity here and try something different because that Reagan shit ain't working anymore.
Well, I mean, to take that a step further, the difference between us and Britain is that their Tories weren't trying to throw out the Queen and every form of government and put in a dictatorship. And you've got Donald Trump, using if I say I'm going to commit a crime out loud before I do it, that way it won't be so bad. And that's not a crime. Right. And and that's been his strategy his entire adult life. It's why he has been a criminal his entire adult life. And even now, he has yet to suffer consequences for it. I mean, for God's sakes, anybody else I have 34 felonies. I'm not sitting here talking to you guys right now.
No, Jesus Christ. Of course not. No. I was telling someone yesterday, I was watching the debate. We have a little group chat going back and forth. And I was telling them that, this group of people in this chat are all part of this, we're part of the political circle here in different states. And I said, if you really think about it, this election is like the analogy would be, we're all kind of looking at ourselves in the mirror in this election. We're looking back at ourselves and realizing that as ugly as Trump and his politics are, it is a reflection of who we are.
Yeah, it really is.
It is. And I think we need to admit that in order to be able to vote a different way.
Yeah. I've been saying that for a long time when people say that's not who we are. No, that's exactly who we are.
It's exactly who we are. Look at our founding, so, we can go historically and talk about the violence throughout. People always say, well, why is this election so violent? Well, there's been other times in history.
We are one of the most violent societies in history. In fact, I can't remember where I saw this, but in the 248 years we have been a country, we have only not been at war with somebody 7 of those years.
I brought that up to somebody a while back, and I said, if you think about it, we've always been in a war or a conflict, and they forget that because, we live in our comfortable lives on a daily and, all this and that, and it is what it is on a daily. But when you really dig deep and you look at ourselves in the mirror, this is who we are. It doesn't surprise me that somebody like Trump rose to where he did. It really doesn't. It's grotesque. but there's a part of that in all of us, I think.
My fourth great grandfather had his head bashed in and killed in an election fight in 1876 in Memphis, Tennessee.
1876. Wow,
yeah,
geez.
And I don't want to delve too deeply into it, but he had been a Confederate cavalryman in 1876. You can kind of guess he was probably wearing a hood when he had his head bashed in.
Probably. I mean,
Yeah. But yeah, you're right. This is that we've never not been a violent society.
No.
But we're probably coming toward the end. I want to take up one more topic. Is what do you think the chances are once we get past November 5th that we see violence by the losers?
100%.
Yeah, me too. I'm up there with you. I think it's going to be very probable. It's just, I think, almost inevitable. Not so much because Trump lost. If that's what happens.
Well, I'm going on the supposition. Trump loses, they start, saying unfair, suing, and he starts riling up his guys to go out there with their Trump trucks and.
I want to give you the corollary of this though as well, and that is that if Trump wins, there's going to be violence.
Right.
It's going to be the same yahoos looking for folks like us.
Right.
To bash in the head, drag in the back of a pickup truck, and do whatever. Yeah.
What happens if he loses and all these people that won these elections don't certify it? I mean, people forget that part of it. You're right. This is not as clear cut of a. I was reading something today about Kamala has to win big.
Yeah.
I just don't know how probable that is. I mean,
I think it's very probable. And I've been saying that for a long time because I think a lot of the vote that she's going to get, we're not seeing it yet. And you got to remember, the momentum is all on her side. Yeah, and let's go back and you look at Barack in 2008. He was losing to McCain up until
big time. Yeah.
Big time up until almost damn near November. And it was a generational election.
Well, let me throw a little water on that. Me being the devil's advocate here, just looking at the numbers, and Louie, you and I both know, numbers mean a lot when it comes to these things. 16, 18, 20, 22, we've won or lost by just a hair. The elections have all been, whether it's at the local level, the congressional, it's all been by a hair, unless you're just in a solid district. And I don't see any reason for that to change here in 24.
I mean, in my opinion, the way the districts are gerrymandered make it probable that what you said will happen. I would agree politically on that. I think, because Ed brings up one good point that I think is underestimated, in that in the battleground states, I do think that there's so much money being poured into by the Harris campaign in these battleground states that there could very well be a possibility there's a bunch of registered voters that we've never counted before that come up and take the states for her. And then she wins big. Is it probable? I don't know, honestly. It's so unpredictable. I don't think there's ever been that much money spent in several of these battleground states to try to do it. So it's almost like an experiment.
I don't think there's ever been that much money spent in Arizona ever.
Period.
I mean, not even close. No. And I would say the same is probably in Nevada.
We're at Nevada.
I mean,
Nevada.
States, that's the entire election. 7 states.
That's it.
I mean, even the comedians, it was Jon Stewart. He said there's 2 countries in the U.S. now. There was one that was in Arizona.
I saw that.
And then the rest of us, we don't give a shit a stand.
Did you see when I think, who was it though, on one of the late nights that was saying that Kamala was giving Trump like the facial expressions of like the look you give your son when he's trying to explain to you why he should own a pet tiger?
That was Colbert. That was Stephen Colbert. Yeah, I saw that this morning myself. Yeah. Explaining why he should giving a presentation on why he should have a tiger.
Pet tiger. I mean, it's just hilarious. I mean, it's silly, but that's how the guy was coming across. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
She She did very well. Just looking at the body language, and you didn't see it so much last night because we saw the whole stage, but today on the news shows where they're doing the split screen kind of thing because they can. Her body language and just both of their body language and reactions were completely opposite.
Right.
She did fantastically well. He completely failed it. He failed the assignment.
Yeah. One of you brought up momentum, and that you could look at like any sport as an analogy. When you go up to the playoffs, you could be the team with the best record, but if you don't have the momentum going into the playoffs, you're probably going to lose. And I think she is that team right now that has the momentum going into the finals.
I had a political writer in an Arizona group just in the last couple of weeks telling me there was no such thing as momentum in polling. And I was like, okay. I don't want to pick a fight with you. That we're on the same side. So, you go ahead and believe what you want to believe. But I think that's horseshit.
Well, I'll go, with my own personal experience. It's like, I'm pretty, for a physician, we're not supposed to be overtly political. Definitely not with patients, and you're not supposed to make your fellow nurses and people like you uncomfortable.
You're voting for Trump.
No, people know, who I support, and here in the last week or so, I've started having people come up to me and said, I'm really glad that you're doing what you're doing because I feel, like, you're doing something valuable, and it's like, you've made me think about it. And so, I've been getting that. It's not like, thousands of people, but, enough, and at different places I go to that I think, there's other people like me, doing witness and testimony like this. I think, it's going to make a difference.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, I wear this everywhere I go now downtown. And I get a lot of remarks, good remarks. I've not had anybody say anything rude to me. I've only had good, and it's from the grandmas, and it's from the African American families, and but I love it because if you saw me wearing any other hat, you'd think I was one of them.
Right. And
I do this on purpose.
Color. It's like the red is not the hat. It's so.
Yeah. It's when I saw it, it's like I got to have that. So cool.
Well, I tell you what, let's go ahead and wrap up here. So I want to get your prediction on, or not prediction, but in your mind, what should the Democrats and especially Kamala Harris be doing over the next 7 weeks? What is the strategy going forward?
Well,
you know what? Let's let Louie go last because he's the expert, and I don't want to be swayed. I don't want to be swayed by his expert opinion. So I'll say the bullshit answer out first. No. What should Democrats be doing? I think Kamala is doing exactly what she should be doing right now, which is going into the battleground states. I think if you live in New York, you should not expect to see Kamala Harris or Tim Walz, but Pennsylvania, they need to buy a second home there, and certainly the blue wall states, the others as well. But also, let's take some ground away from him in North Carolina. Georgia's ripe for the picking, and I expect him to see in Arizona a couple more times, in Nevada as well. That's me.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of tail off on that and give a baseball analogy, we made a pitching change, say in the 7th inning. And we're approaching the 9th. And any pitching coach will tell you, when you're in that position, you challenge the hitter. If they're going to beat you, they're going to beat you on your best pitch. Don't get tricky. Don't get fancy. Throw them that fastball because that's what you're good at. Challenge them. And I think we need to keep up that pressure and take it to the jugular.
Well, that's speaking my language. I mean, it's like, I have to agree with Louie on this, is that, we've finally gotten over the when they go high or they go low, we go high stuff, which I understand the sentiment, but I've always thought when you're in a political battle, that's really tying your hands behind your back when you're not, when they're coming after you, pull you down in the gutter and stab you, you've got to take the battle back to them. And Kamala, I think, is the perfect person to do this. And she showed that, demonstrated it masterfully last night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if we continue down this path, I think that, the momentum that we were talking about, Harry, I think that's going to continue.
I do too.
I think you're going to continue to see people, come up and tap you on the shoulder when you're walking down the street. And it's like, man, I like you. Where'd you get it?
That's I don't even wear this kind of hat. I just don't wear this kind of hat. But I do now. For the next 50 some odd days, I do.
Right. You don't go with a hunter look normally, right? You're just
not normally at all. Normally it's Crocs and cut off shorts and a terrible t-shirt. Well, although I will say I'm going into surgery, Ed, as you know, on the 5th of November, Election Day. I will be under the gas.
Oh, man.
And so I'm wearing this into the hospital.
Yeah, and make sure you vote before, obviously.
Okay. I'm an early voter. That vote will be in the can within 24 hours after it hits my mailbox.
There you
now,
go.
one of the things that I will predict is that the election night parties are going to be kind of anticlimactic because you're not going to know anything.
You're not going to know.
It's like for the past 20 years, I've made a habit of, going downtown, just to walk through, pick up the sentiment, let people cry on your fingers, whatever. It's like, I don't think that's going to be, useful this year.
Right.
Well, I'm going to be doped up on so many opiates on the election night that my party's going to happen regardless of what.
Right. Exactly. I hear you.
All right, guys. Well, thanks a lot. Had fun, and we'll do it again in a week or 6 days. How's that?
Yeah, we'll come back next Tuesday. Same place, same time with us three.
Well, whatever time works best for you guys, because it just can't be too late on my end.
Oh, that's right. You're ahead. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I'm ahead. So y'all figure it out. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. I'm out of here.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Take care. Thank you.